Amitofo. Welcome, everyone. We begin with joining our palms and bow. Recitation of the four great vows. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless vexations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit about some topic that came up on the Mindwork Forum, and it had to do with some workings during the middle of the night where there were some mind work happening, and when it does, I am, I guess you could say, asleep, but not really asleep. But in that time period, it becomes very easy to obtain information from mind itself. And during this evening, there was a constant working of mathematical formulas, as if I could try to come up with a formula that for words that I could not express what was the meaning of the absolute or the experience of the absolute, but trying to put it in an abstract formula to try to get to somewhere. And as I was working on it, I came on 0 times 0 equals 0. And for a moment, there was this rush of saying, that makes sense. This is good. 0 times 0 is 0. This is like an emptiness. But as I began to continue in this processing, something in my mind wasn't comfortable with that. It wasn't satisfied. There was something that was missing in this that is not something that we can really put down, define, but also it defied the idea of using some formula to do that. And if you read through that part in my Mindwork forum, you'll find there's a contribution of Tom, who's present today. And in terms of as a mathematician, the suggestion of something, of some kind of a quantity or value, but is not necessarily presented as an absolute or an integer, but just the possibility or something along these lines that has to be factored in, this kind of an X factor. I know that he gave some very fancy words to it that belie my mastery of mathematics, but it was an interesting way because what he was presenting was essentially the conundrum that I had at that time in terms of trying to come up with something that could be a formula, but really can't be a formula, but nevertheless is something expresses the this, and here's where you get trapped with words, this essence or this intrinsic nature that in itself transcends the idea of zero. If we look at zero from the viewpoint of nothingness, it doesn't quite get us there, because is it just nothing, or is there something else there? And I know there's something else there. So as I began to, that night around 4 o'clock in the morning, I started writing until about 5 o'clock, and was just letting the mind do a free flow where you can see what I'm doing there. But if you follow it along, it may lead you to something, or may lead you to the fact that I'm not just speaking gibberish or just double negating, triple negating, or whatever. I'm looking for something by distinguishing all of this phenomena from its inherent nature. And it's that inherent nature that we can't put a sign on it. We in writings talk about it as sunyata, emptiness, um, and and just say this is emptiness, but emptiness of what? And there's a, a real interesting thing in terms of when we start talking about emptiness. And if you want to really explore emptiness, you just have to carry on a debate with a Tibetan practitioner, a good Tibetan practitioner, and there's different schools of thought in terms of what this emptiness is. And so we have to see this is an emptiness, or sometimes we talk about it as a nothingness, or it comes back out as a suchness. And so when we say the suchness or thusness, these only apply as signposts for something that is signless. And this is important because it isn't simply that there's a nothingness like emptiness, that nothing matters. That's the point. It does matter. It does matter. In all of this practice, when we get through all the way through the Heart Sutra, and they're saying, you know, that form is not an emptiness, emptiness is not an form. It's precisely that way, all the way to mental cognition or consciousness, and saying they're empty. And we kind of walk away and go, that's it. Everything is empty. Is it empty in this way? Now, sometimes in the Tibetan schools, they'll say it's empty of the phenomenal nature, but it isn't empty of mind. Or it can be empty, that everything is empty. But if it's empty in this way, we run into some problems when we begin to look at it. And that's kind of what I was heading for with this. And perhaps with this kind of a premise, it will make more sense. And by the way, there's an arcane reference to life on Mars, and I don't know if anybody picked it up, but it was a TV show that came on around circa 2006, 2007, where nothing in the story made any sense. It was about a detective in around the 70s, I believe in Chicago or something. But all sorts of strange things would happen. There were these anomalies or rips in the idea of his reality that he couldn't figure it out what that was. He just didn't know. But everything appeared to be solid and clear, except for every once in a while something wouldn't fit. Maybe a little robot would go by or something, but he couldn't quite figure out what it was. But in the end, it was that this was a program that was being played in his head on a long flight to Mars, and so it was pre-programmed, but it got a glitch. And because it got a glitch, it wasn't a perfect play. There was some glitches in it that didn't quite seem right. And so it left him kind of in a very different state afterwards, because he could not detect that this world that he was in was a dream. Sounds familiar, right? It's pretty strange when we begin to look at this world and we start doing that. And maybe in the middle of the night, you start getting information from Mars. No, don't tell people Gilbert's getting the signals from Mars, please. But the thing is that when we do this, there's something there that defies the idea of that all of the input is coming from one source or clear source or whatever, and one is two. And it's something that begins to kind of work at that, and work at the idea that someone is this is true reality versus that this is a dream. But it's so good of a clear dream that it's hard to refute it and say it's not really reality. But there's all these clues that pop up in mind that kind of let you go that way. And here today, I'm kind of doing a little bit of a free flow with you, half in the samsara and half in the absolute, to try to give you a feel for where I'm going with this. And hopefully by the end, you'll see there's something there that makes some sense. But I wanted to do this because I didn't want you to think that it was just simply gibberish that I was writing, but that it was working towards something. This is this mind work in the middle of the night, and whatever was coming up was not going through the process of Gilbert or through the self. It was just being typed from an immediate um, input of the mind itself. So it goes, we are zero, non-existent. So we start with this premise: we're zero, we're not existent because we're not really there, like a dream. Mind is the truth. So the mind, here we say mind is the truth, but again, this mind, our definition of mind, or even pointing to mind, is in the samsara. It's in the dream. We cannot say that this is the true mind, but this is where we begin to look at. Mind is beyond phenomenal, that which has no form, sensation, perception, volition, and consciousness. They're all appearances. They're not a formula. So I came up with this. I can't put it into a formula. It's not self. So we can't say that it's self, or can't say that self is the problem. Because if the self is a problem, then self would have to have a true existence. But it doesn't really have a true existence. And then we bang away at self nature. What's the difference between self nature and self or not self? We're saying we move away from that and say it's not self, this is not the issue. No, if you begin to go back, an argument could be made that the Buddha was just teaching about suffering and the cause of suffering. That's all that he taught. It wasn't that easy. He taught a lot more than that, even though he may have said that, or some people might have said that he said that. It's written all over in terms of the truth, but one has to extrapolate it in a way in which it is not mined by the ego or by a self, but it is the self-evidence of this underlying absolute, that which is there. We cannot define it. It's signless, but it's nevertheless there. And if we say that everything is empty, then why would there be an interest in delivering sentient beings? If it's empty, it doesn't matter. It's just a dream. On to the next dream, whatever it is. But it matters, and it's there right from the point of the metaphysics of the Heart Sutra. And in the Heart Sutra, we understand that everything is empty, but do we really understand everything is empty? Not really. On the sound hearer level, the Shravaka level, yeah, everything is empty. And they say, what does the Heart Sutra say? Everything is empty. It's precisely empty. You get to the metaphysical level, and they're saying, because of this, there is this perfected wisdom, this Anyatara Samyak Sambodhi. And as a result of that, implied, not specifically stated, but implied only in the Heart Sutra, is that there's a great compassion. It's not specifically mentioned, but it is the idea of using the mind's own perception, which is this awareness that is used. And you go to the Mahaprajna Paramita Sutras, that there's quite a bit of talk about the mind's awareness. And this is picked up on by Daoxin and Hongren, the fourth and fifth patriarchs, of the mere awareness of the mind. And so that there's this awareness that is counter the idea that that all the five perceptions are just empty, but saying that perception is not the true perception because it's empty, but it's not the true perception. We're looking at it in the esoteric way, that which cannot be written, that Avalokitesvara, Guanyin Bodhisattva, was using the mind's own perception. This perception is different from the perception, the conditional perception of someone in samsara, some human being, a ghost, an animal, a hell dweller, heaven dweller. They're using a samsaric perception, whereas the mind is using its own perception. And here, as a bodhisattva, it is generating through this wisdom of using the mind's own perception, this anyatara samyak sambodhi, this unexcelled wisdom that is producing this compassion. There is the rub, because it isn't just empty. If we stop there and we say it's empty, we just go empty, empty, empty. It doesn't matter. Anicca, it's impermanent, right? But when we look at the three seals, we don't really see them in this way. In fact, nobody can even agree on the third seal, whether it's suffering or nirvana. They're the same thing. Some people say the third seal is suffering, and some say it is nirvana, and then they go to a fourth seal. They add nirvana onto it. But the sutras say it's neither suffering nor nirvana. There's not a difference. What? And then, of course, if you say what, that's when I bring in the Hui Ning, and he says that's the no, and they say the no of what? That there is no what. This is what people don't know, but they want to know, but they really can't know it because they don't know what. Have I lost you yet? Here, what we're saying is there's no self to say what. So in that night, when I'm looking at this, the what is useless because there's no what. What? No what. You don't know what. There's no what. And I'm playing with this because this is what was happening in my head, banging away at this to try to look at it and say, it's right there, this demarcation point where the words can't go further, but you have to have the faith to be able to say, if the Heart Sutra is correct, it's beyond the idea of just simply emptiness and calling everything empty, because it doesn't work that way. So this emptiness that's there, it's a pregnant emptiness. It's kind of hard to describe what pregnant emptiness means. It means that there's something there that can be set into motion, something there, the knowing aspect of the Rulai Zong, of the Tathagata Garbha, this Tathagata Garbha, this knowing aspect of it, it's pointing towards this total awareness or totality of consciousness, depending on what school you're talking about. They all intermix. But in this totality, then one sees things differently. But it's not you because it's not self. It is mind. And mind at this point, the highest that it can get to is the totality of consciousness, or the purified mere awareness of the mind. In a bodhisattva, it's a mere awareness. There's a mere awareness of it, and the bodhisattva is there to fulfill the vows. what is about to deliver sentient beings of self-nature. We could say of illusory nature, but it's just really self-nature. We can't distinguish it and say it's illusory, therefore it's not real. Once we get into that, then we say, how can it not be real if it belongs to mind? So what Chan does is it doesn't give you any breathing room, doesn't give you anywhere to let the ego escape with some kind of a victory. No, even to say, okay, well, it's a tie. No, it isn't in this way. There was never any battle to begin with. It's like you carrying on an argument with yourself. But there's no self to carry on the argument. On either side of that, no self. It can't be, because that mere awareness or total awareness after a bodhisattva is the omnisciousness of the mind, the omnipresent mind. It isn't, can't be called wisdom anymore. That's why they say there is no wisdom nor any attainment, because none of that stuff is happening. It's very, very strange how we look at this idea of self. Who's listening to me right now? Are you listening to me? Is mind listening to me? Is mind aware of that? That's probably where you should be going. But then beyond that point, then it's just the omnisciousness of the mind. Not, I would just say it's the omnisciousness. We can't even call it mind, because calling it mind drags it back down into samsara. So where we're at and where we're working constantly is reaching, trying to break through this what appears to be some barrier. The ancients called it an iron wall. But with the practice and with the wisdom, it's able to break through that. You have to trust me on this. It does work. And when it does, all of this information flows freely through. It doesn't matter. I cannot say I'm enlightened. I'm not enlightened. No, I don't have a complete free flow information as to in the country of Botswana that there's a caterpillar that's hatching. I don't have that ability, but I have a sense of that. I have a sense of things, but not in such preciseness as mind has. Mind is mine when it's not mine. When it's mine, how can it be omniscious? And it can't have a locality. This is very, very important, extremely important in our practice when we talk about the dwelling place of Manjusri. The dwelling place of Manjusri is non-dwelling. You really have to play with that. Just keep playing with it. Don't give it up. You're not like some cat on catnip playing with a little ball, and then finally lose your interest in it and go to sleep. You can't be like that. You have to. It has to bug you. It has to bug you. You can't stop from not wanting to figure it out. It's not easy. The only way you can do it is you have to rest in the present moment. All the time resting in the present moment. But when you practice, all the more so, you have to rest in that moment. It is like Fa Yang said, you cannot subdue the mind by force. So you have to back off, rest, what the Tibetans call rigpa. Rigpa is the clarity of the mind, this clear mind, we could almost say primordial clarity, because that's kind of where I'm heading. That's a clue to where I'm heading. But it is this clarity of the mind that we're going towards. And I hate to even say we're going towards anything, because where is there to go? going back to the non-dwelling, any place is as good as another to enter. You don't have to go somewhere to get there. It can happen in a snap of fingers. Unfortunately, we snap our fingers and we look for some mental trick to hold on to and then to self-certify ourselves that we've arrived. There's no arriving when it's already there. And then you say, where is it at? No place, because the mind is non-dwelling. Now you're leaning towards the absolute. Leaning towards the absolute allows you to look back into samsara with a little more clarity, a little more explanation, a little bit more of understanding how mind works and why things are appearing. This is the awareness of the mind, the clear awareness of the mind. But when we look at it, something's still missing with all of that. And as I was processing through this, I realized that there's a difference between a primordial Buddha. This is what came very late in this whole process of a primordial Buddha, and Vairocana begins to come up into my mind. Vairocana. And how many of you? Some of you have your lights on here. How many of you have heard of Vairocana? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. So Vairocana is known as a Adi Buddha, A-D-I. That's another term that you'll hear. But Vairocana, does anybody know the difference between Vairocana and Shakyamuni Buddha? It's an open book test, and you don't have to get it right. But I'm just kind of curious if anybody can say why what's the difference between the two of them. Nobody? Shakyamuni Buddha. All right, let me give you a hint. I'll give you a hint because I really want you to process this. We know what Shakyamuni Buddha looked like, at least iterations of it, right? We know. What does Vairocana look like? Anybody have an idea?
No form, no physical form.
So there's no pictures of him, no video of Vairocana, no carvings of Vairocana, no paintings, no nothing. Why? And it's very interesting because Shakyamuni Buddha has a very close relationship with Vairocana. In fact, in the one of the sutras, I think it's the Buddha Vatamsaka, which is the Vatamsaka Sutra of the Huayan Jing, talks about that there's 1,000 Shakyamuni Buddhas, and these 1,000 Shakyamuni Buddhas are plentiful like lotus petals, and that there are 1,000 million Buddha worlds in which Shakyamuni Buddha simultaneously appears under a Bodhi tree and simultaneously becomes illuminated. I was just wondering, where's Tom at? And anyway, isn't 1,000 million Buddha worlds a billion? Or am I wrong with that? Anyway, they said 1,000 million Buddha worlds. In any case, something interesting about this. Vairocana is a primordial Buddha. And as a primordial Buddha, let me see, I'm not sure this will work. It'll show up or not. I've done this before, but we know there is an infinite radiant light, a pure radiant light that represents the mind. Unfiltered, absolutely pure, infinite light. See, can you see that? It's just a rays of light. There we go. Like that. That's Virachana. This was Virachana's primordial mind. Just like that. Now, what's the difference between Shakyamuni Buddha and Virachana? It's that somewhere there was a blip that wasn't there originally. And in this blip, it started with ignorance and it ended with death. But don't be afraid because you just keep going through the cycle. But that was Shakyamuni's world coming into being. But as we see this, and we see it like a little blemish, it's like when you were very young, if you can remember back when you're a preteen or getting to be a teen, and you go, what is that? I've never seen that like that, but it keeps growing and it's soft, and you keep picking at it, and then it turns white, and you got your first pimple. And the worst thing you can do is mess with it, but you're going to do it anyway because you're a teenager. And so you're there picking at it, and it's ruining your perfect, beautiful, youthful face. It's not that way anymore. You got this blemish there. There's ignorance. The difference between Virachana and Shakyamuni is Shakyamuni came into the world through that blemish. In order to eradicate the pimple, it was going under the skin to eradicate the pimple. When he got here, he realized it was a lot bigger than he thought. But in actuality, it's infinitesimally small in comparison to the radiance of the mind. But nevertheless, the mind is aware of that blemish, no matter how slight, because the mind was absolutely perfect in all respects. Shakyamuni Buddha goes into that and appears in this world. That's why we know what his body looked like. The Virachana didn't have to do that. Virachana is a primordial Buddha before all of this stuff happens. And so Shakyamuni Buddha comes in an appearance body. So this appearance body comes in. Why did it come in? If 0 times 0 is 0, why did it come in? Because it still matters. It's like if you ever had the tiniest little grain of sand in your shoe, and you can feel it on the bottom of your foot. It's not that bad, but you still know it's there. It still bugs you that it's there. So you got to take off your shoe, and then you step, and you still feel it, and you find out it's inside your sock. So you have to take your sock off too. To get to it, you have to dig it out. It's not as easy as it looks. But once you understand that what's happening, then you realize there is no grain of sand. You're suffering for nothing. But it is this body that comes into the world. And did it really come into the world? And if it came, where did it come from? Wouldn't mind be everywhere? So you see where I'm going with all of this, and if you begin to read what I wrote there, you will see that the big question here is about not it's this or that, but before this or that, what was there? What was your original face? What was all of this? That's why the Huatou is used to push and push and push so that one realizes there is no ego, no life and being, no personality. It is just in this way that those things were just simply a dream. But we cannot just simply say, oh, they're just a dream, that's empty and that's it. No, there is still an aspect of this beautiful, radiant mind that was subsequently the third turning of the Dharma wheel. And that third turning of the Dharma wheel is Buddha nature. It is in the Buddha nature that cannot be quantified, cannot be calculated. It cannot be in this way. We want to try to do it. We want to put it and say, oh, this is in this way, but it's not. It isn't in that way at all. It is there. We cannot say exists or doesn't exist. We can't even call it thus. We call it thus anyway, and we call it the Tathagata Garbha, the Buddha womb. But all of that Buddha womb holds everything without any kind of a distinction or sign. It's signless. But from this side, we want proof. We want to know, is this real or not real? Where mine is in a totally different I can't say dimension or realm or anything. It is not in anything like that. That's why they talked about the thusness and the Tathagata Garbha being that which creates from its own nature. This is the part we have trouble understanding. We have trouble penetrating the sutras because we fundamentally do not understand this, that everything is created by the mind. Once we read that everything is and understand everything's created by the mind, all of a sudden the sutras begin to fall into place very easily. But because we don't understand it, always looks like somebody is playing a game with us, or like the youth game of snipe hunt, where you go out to find a snipe. I don't know if anybody ever did that when they're young, and you generally do it to the kids that were younger than you, and they went out snipe hunting. Of course, there's no thing called a snipe, but they don't know that. And we don't know that until we at least begin to open our eyes. Once we open our eyes, then we go, wait a second. There's something more to this. This isn't just that me and I'm suffering. Because where did my suffering go when I was meditating and it went, or when this happened or whatever? And then you begin to see these little cracks in the idea of reality. If I was suffering a moment ago and now I'm not suffering, how did that happen? These are those little things to let you know, like a little robot going by where you go, where did that come from? But it begins to undermine your idea of reality. Now, the thing about this that's most important, what still remains there is our pursuit of the truth. And when I was very young, I wrote an article saying about a dog chasing its own tail. And it's just chasing its tail, chasing its tail. It can never catch up with it. But that's the way it is in this world when we don't understand, it's not the self. We don't understand the totality of it, but we can't see it. When we begin to look at this from a different viewpoint and we begin to see that it's a radiant energy, infinite light, and all of a sudden this little blip, this pimple on this radiant energy begins create things. Our problem is this: we don't have a scale for that. We don't have a way of quantifying that, what we're seeing. We see the world and we go, wow, it's pretty big. It took me a long time to fly to Singapore, 15 hours, or to Australia, wherever. It's a long way. But we can't even appreciate how far light travels in 1 year. It's called the parsec. And we we don't see things in this way. We measure time in a rather arbitrary one. Well, when we get around the sun, we'll call that a year. That's good enough for me. Yeah, it's good enough for me. Whatever. All we need to know is when to plant our crops, right, and when to harvest them. And that's our idea of time. But is it really? They calculated 5 billion years of this particular universe. Um, is it really that? I mean, how do we even gauge something like that? But when we begin to look at it from mind, these calculations are infinitesimally um, small in comparison to mind. And that's why mind is, in the sutras are always talking about these incredible lengths of time, or scales, so that we begin to break down the idea that this is such a big place, or some building is so tall, or Everest is so tall, whatever it is. We don't even have a clue about dimensions, nor can we even use it anywhere else in the universe. And so it's something that, as we begin to look at things, that's what Nagarjuna did, was the refutation of time and space. Because once he began to do that, then we began to think, well, maybe there's something else here. This is what we do. This is mind work. We are constantly um, gauging the gauges to see if the gauges are correct. No, when we look at things and say, well, how can that be like that? The other day, I was having the dialogue with Guo Hui, and to me, it was literally like it all passed in 5 minutes. It was so quick. It was like so incredibly fast that you wanted to be able to cram all of this information that you had into one little minute, but it was impossible to do that. And the only thing you can do is not cram the information, but impart the heart of what you're trying to say, and find the way to communicate in a non-verbal way, non-temporal way. Is the only thing you can do is do it in this way. And you hope that people will be able to tune into this esoteric, at least to the metaphysical, that they can be able to do that, because it's impossible for you to impart everything that you want to say. But this is what we did. And I even though it was a very quick song, um, it was a song of mine, and that was what was important for people to hear, to feel it, for the next generations, of what we were pointing at. But when we look at this, we really have to take a look and say, no, don't get caught up on the idea of just simply emptiness. Because if we get caught up on the emptiness, then we miss it. And lately, I've been saying a lot, because people get trapped in their own minds. They can't see the forest because of the tree. They can't see the Pratikasamapada because Pratika Samappada is happening all the time. And so they are unable to discern why somebody has said something, why this has happened, or more importantly, what's going to happen next. And even more importantly than that, directing the mind to make something happen in the future. Not manipulation of the environment, but a harmony with the environment, which is very, very important. But that harmony with the environment is a recollection back to the pure time of the primordial Buddha and this perfected nature of the mind that's there. Even though we think that that little blip is here, wherever it is in this, there it is. But it isn't in that way where it's there. That little blip is just an illusion. It's not real. That's what makes the difference. And the reason of entry of Shakyamuni Buddha into this world is because it's not real, because it's empty, because there is no suffering, but it appears to be suffering, but it's not suffering. It is that essence, that part, which the French say, je ne sais quoi, I don't know what it is, but it's there. It is that is the intrinsic nature, the self nature of mind that cannot in any way be identified or described, but there's no moment that it is not present, no moment that it is not observing everything. We can't do it because we're just a bubble in a stream. We don't really have anything. We think we're red meatballs, but we really have 0 calories. And so, but we think, therefore, we believe we are. It isn't in this way. It's the greatest fallacy of believing something that is nothing and looking for this true nothing in the nothing. It cannot work in that way. There has to be a transcendence to understand that it cannot be found in this way. This is the profoundness of our practice. If you don't believe me, go back and read the sutras. All of a sudden, they'll jump out at you. It will just come so clear and go, wow, before I never understood what that meant. I just thought they were just fantastical sized numbers, but they're really trying to say something in all of this. And that's the part that's very important for people to understand. We don't understand how mind works. We read the things and we say that's impossible for things to be in the scale that we're looking at. It's not. It cannot work. But in fact, it does work in this way. Let me see what I've got here. So Virachana is called also called a cosmic Buddha, and that would have gone over very well in the 60s, I think. You go, who are you practicing? I'm practicing with the cosmic Buddha. Wow. How do I get into that? Too late. Okay. So it's also seen as the Dharmakaya, or the Supreme Buddha body. So in this way, and when we say it is the Tathagata Garbha or the Dharmakaya, whatever name you put on it, there's no difference. It is just the creator of everything. This is what's the most important aspect of it, because when we look at it, right away we find out there is no suffering. Why? Because mind created it, but it's just an illusion. Whatever mind can create, it can uncreate, and that's the part that we use. We use the part of uncreating illusion and creating faith. When we begin to create the faith, you'll be surprised how this works. And it points to the reason of why Shakyamuni came here with the interest in delivering sentient beings that are just simply bubbles, but it still appears on the screen, on the cosmic screen. There's still that blemish there, or the so-called blemish. It's not really there. But when our practice matures, we begin to stop putting down these ideas of clinging to phenomenal things and begin to understand that this very mind that you're using right now can be put to great use. You cannot believe how powerful the mind is, but you have to harness that power. What Han Chan said, derive power from your own intrinsic or inherent power. And this comes with practice. This comes with a faith in mind and following the Buddhas in study. All of these things begin to change how you navigate or course through this prajna paramita. We don't understand it in that way, but it is. We just keep falling asleep at the wheel. But that which believes in suffering is that which also can remove the suffering because it created the suffering. There was no suffering before. And then you think, well, why would the Buddha create suffering? The Buddha is not a god, a divinity. Do not think in this way. The Buddha is the nature of the very mind that you're using right now. We cannot understand that because we don't have a hive mentality, like where all of the bees have their jobs and they don't go, I really wanted to be the queen. I'm just a worker bee or whatever, fanning the queen with my hand. I can't believe it. Next lifetime, I'm going to be the queen getting fat. They don't have that kind of a thought. The hive mentality is all of them. It is for them a single organism. For us, it is just a dream. But nevertheless, there's an interest in that, and nevertheless, there's an interest in this corporal body navigating through the samsara to make a difference, even though it knows that it's in a dream, walking around in a dream body, helping dream bodies. How does that even make any sense? But if you use the heart, it does make sense. The good part about Buddhism is that it can be changed. We use the paramita of patience and we understand we don't have to do it in one lifetime. But if you see it in the right way and you can turn the wheel again to the point where people buy into it, then it will grow in geometric proportions that will grow and pay off better than any tricky pyramid scheme. But it works in the same way as a pyramid scheme, except it pays off because it grows so quickly. But we have to convince people to practice with us, to increase the number of practitioners, and those increase the numbers of practitioners. We don't let it die off. So we have to protect it and bring it forth. The one thing about we didn't really talk about it that much, but I think Guo Hui mentioned it some more about the fact of the electronic media and being able to communicate in this way. I really think that can be a great key to the dissemination of Buddha Dharma and analytical thinking in a way which will attract people to pay attention, and they can buy in and see it will work, so long as they're not looking for an instant payoff, but they're in it for the long run. With this kind of a Buddha hive mentality, it will work. And we don't have to worry about that. We have all the time in the world. We're on Buddha time. It will work. You see, it changes everything when you begin to see it in this way. You don't have to worry. I'm only worried about giving the Buddha Dharma a, a continual spin. After my master finished spinning it, he's still spinning it with his Dharma, and I'm spinning it with mine and bringing his to help me spin it as well. It is in this way that why we practice. Again, this is kind of a little bit different lecture, but I wanted to do it because whether one is a beginner or one is an advanced practitioner, there's something in what I'm saying that can be beneficial to you. And as you begin to practice more, you will find it will work in that way. This is so apropos for this time. Every time I see this, so I start thinking those billionaire guys that invented the computers or advanced the computers. It says in the cosmology of Vatamsaka Sutra, our universe is just one of the immeasurable number of universes in the multiverse. Somebody's going to pick that up. Trust me, they probably already patented it. In the multiverse called the ocean of worlds, whose surface and inside are decorated with the arrangement of flowers. Ergo, why they call it the Huayan Jing, the Flower Adornment Sutra. And it says the Vatamsaka states that the entire cosmos has been purified by the Buddha Virochana through his bodhisattva practices for countless eons. After having met countless Buddhas, the sutra also states that our world is the Virochana Buddha field. And again, this is kind of an interesting thing because I like the term Buddha field in the sense that it's no longer referring to things as universes, but universes are being turned in the Buddha field, which is this infinite field. Virochana is closely associated with Shakyamuni Buddha, and in some cases is identified with him in the Avatamsaka Sutra, Huayan, in that they're referring to the Huayan school, which follows closely with the Flower Adornment Sutra. And go back to see where we're at. Generally see Shakyamuni as an emanation body, a Nirmanakaya from the ultimate Buddha, Virochana, the illuminator. So again, here we're seeing that the Buddha is coming in as a Nirmanakaya, meaning an appearance body. And that's a bit of the difference between that and Virochana, at least an appearance body as it pertains to this particular world. And there's a careful distinction there, and perhaps you might interpret me like using a meat cleaver to cut this between Virochana and Shakyamuni, but it's not so much that way as a very, very fine laser slicing of the distinction between Virochana as primordial, original, which to me means that it occurred before ignorance occurred. And so it is that radiant light that was there before anything occluded it, even one small amount. And again, we don't know how much it is. The sutras refer to it as a bubble in a stream. So if you think about a stream and how many bubbles are in a stream, then you know its dimensions with respect to a stream are infinitesimally small and short of duration. In the Shurangama mantra, an especially influential Dharani in the Chinese Chan tradition, Virochana is mentioned to be the host of the Buddha division in the center, one of the 5 major divisions which dispels the vast demon armies in the 5 directions. Christians. And again, when we're talking about demon armies, it's not like there's a bunch of demon armies that are created like some sci-fi program or religious things to scare you. It is just the idea of further ignorance and perpetuation of ignorance that continues to march forward. And our awakening means that we're either part of the problem or part of the solution. Awakening, then we have a choice, and most often than not, that choice, due to the intrinsic nature of the mind, on a true awakening, a true awareness, the nature of the mind, like I say, a true awakening, there is only the interest in removing the suffering, even though we understand that it is an illusion or a dream. It nevertheless is something that draws the attention of the radiant essence of the mind to rectify that. Okay, see where we're at. Okay, I'll finish. Of course, I probably prepared like 10 hours worth of presentation, but what I wanted to do most importantly is give you a feel for where we're going with all of this, and and I wanted to do it with you while it was fresh in my mind, so that you can get it, and it's still so fresh that I'm processing it. And what's funny is a it's like a magnet that brings closer to you what you've already read before, but brings it to you in an orderly manner. It's not just like you're dragging a magnet through sand and picking up iron filings. It's coming back through in a way where it's all in order and perfectly in accordance with the natural rhythm of things, which is what Dao Xin talked about, and also Master Holmgren talked about the natural rhythm of things. And that's the part that doesn't add up in the equations, in the formula. There's this natural rhythm of things that's there, and that's important, but it is beyond quantification or qualification. It is just simply the way that that mind is, without trying to define the mind from a viewpoint of samsara, rather than the idea of the thusness of the mind in its way. The more that we begin to settle the mind, the more the mind will reveal to us. Trust me on that. It will happen. If you don't start chasing after your own tail, you'll find and some of you already have done that, where all of a sudden it just literally falls on your lap. You don't have to do anything. And then you know that now you're getting to a maturation of the practice. Okay. All right. I'll stop there and take any questions. Thank you all for listening. No questions. I have all these people here and no one has a question.
I have a question, Gilbert.
Go ahead.
I guess I'm curious from my own conditioning. I've always kind of drifted towards the emptiness view. So this talk was really helpful about kind of going beyond that. But one thing I've struggled with in my own studies is kind of balancing more the Buddha nature teachings with the emptiness teachings, and kind of balancing them without jumping into one camp or jumping into the other. I guess because tonight you really clarified how they're not in contradiction at all. They're kind of, there's no contradiction between them. So when we're studying this ourselves, if we find ourselves in one camp or the other, is there any, I guess, kind of advice you have for us on this?
I think that you have to trust in the sutras and the teachings. Sometimes we trap ourselves, Nick, because we don't have enough faith in the sutras to really believe that. So we want to believe our own eyes and become the, like, from the Christian way of the doubting Thomases. It isn't necessarily bad to doubt, but it isn't one that uh, requires you to sort it out with just simply, let's say, science to do things. Shifu used to say that science can tell you how you were born to your parents, but it can't tell you why. And that's that aspect of it, that you've got to feel it from your heart. And as you begin to see that, you'll find that there is, let's say, a science to Buddhism, but it's a different kind of science, more towards a quantum practice or quantum physics, but still beyond the quantum physics one, which where we have to totally let go completely to be able to reach it. But we have to have faith that that will work. The only way we can do that, we cannot do it blindly. We have to build the foundation of the practice around us as our safety net or our buffer that enables us to take that leap and to go beyond where our logical reasoning minds hold you back and say, "Hey, Nick, you better not jump there because there's no guarantee what you're going to go into." And but just go in and see for yourself and trust that you're not going to burn up in flames in hell or whatever. You're going to. Uh, no, the worst thing that can happen is you come out of it, but or bounce off the iron wall. Nothing wrong with that. You one day you bounce off the iron wall and it'll shatter. So so then you realize that iron wall, you were the one that built it in the first place, and so you created this kind of a fencing around around this illusion in this beautiful radiant light, and but that fencing too is an illusion. So we have to figure out how to break that down and just let it go. Nothing wrong with getting a good tan from the radiant light, and you just have to open it all up to get it. Let it absorb you, and it will. That's what's called self-absorption of the mind. It works exactly like that. There'll be a moment there, and you'll just be like in one of these sci-fi movies where all of your molecules are separating out and being sucked up. Okay. Unless it's an alien, then you're in trouble. So, anyway, but other than that, you just use your faith and your practice. This is why we go through this, so that if you get to that point, you don't come running back afraid, that something was happening to you. So it's a good question. Thank you. Okay, Wei Shan.
Hi, Gilbert. Your picture, because I've been thinking about your formula, 0 times 0 is still 0, and your picture, you just excuse me, just drew the infinite light and a little blip or little black dot. So that gave me a different picture, different formula. I want to show you and see how you feel about it. It's infinity plus 0 equal to infinity. That's my comment.
Yeah, I mean, because by adding the 0, are you trying to add nothing to it?
There's no thing to begin with. That's why I add nothing. So this is still not perfect equation.
Yeah, maybe infinity squared. But I mean, I understand what you're saying. There's nothing wrong with trying to play with it, play with it. What I realized was that I was doing that night. I literally what you're processing now and saying, what if I put this in? What if I put this integer in? What if I put this character in? Whatever. Till I finally realized nothing's, for me at least, nothing was going to do it, because what we're missing was that secret sauce that makes it all work. And that secret sauce is the interest of mind in mind. Literally, I guess that's probably how you could possibly do that. And if, Tom, you can come up with a formula that works that way, then that's great. But it's really this interest of mind in mind, this interest that on our side looks like unbridled compassion. In mind, it's just the nature of mind. That's the difference. And so it's interesting, because I wanted to get people to kind of take a look at things this way and see where they're going with this in the future as they begin to do this. You're going to get to places where the words aren't helping you anymore, but you still have to slog through it. You still have to push. Don't abandon your mind work. No, and at one moment there will be this transcendence, but it's not going to be the transcendence that makes you into a super Buddha or whatever, as much as just seeing things as they are, as they've always been in this way. And that's why I wanted to bring to you the idea of the Virochana, this primordial Buddha. It's always been that way. So yeah, that's, just keep working that way. Anybody
Thank you.
else? Yes. Is Rosalinda?
Yes, that's me, Rosalind. Master
Rosalind.
Gilbert,
Okay.
yes. May I find out if there is a good way or more efficient way to read the Diamond Sutra and the Heart Sutra? Because sometimes you just read through, do you digest? Do you meditate? What is a good way?
The Diamond Sutra is a very interesting one, as I had mentioned, and you picked up on that what I was doing was the Diamond Sutra in a different way. Not let's say a religious way or relating it in that way, but this is what the Diamond Sutra is doing, is it's presenting things that almost appear to be identical, but they're not. There is this constant implanting or fertilization of the mind to enable the mind to reach a mature state. And so the first times when you read the Diamond Sutra, your mind is not ready for it. It's kind of like doing those Rubik's cubes where you keep twisting it and trying to do it, and then all of a sudden you start going, oh, look, if I do this, then these colors will stay on this side, and so then you're cracking codes. So as you begin to crack the codes, it's the whole process of turning it and learning, not just reading it, but penetrating it. You want to know, what does this mean? What does this mean? No, you want to be able to make some headway in it. So you don't read it as if you were reading it in a devotional way. Some people will read sutras in a devotional way, so they're just reading the words. Nothing wrong with that, but they're not penetrating the sutras. But if you read something in the Diamond Sutra and you want to know, why is it saying this? Why are they saying, for instance, the sands of a Ganges River were all Ganges rivers, and all those collectively were that? Because the number is so incalculable. It's beyond your ability. But then it says, not as much as if those were all treasure chests or sands, not as much as reading to one person 4 lines of this sutra, and you go, why? What's so special about that? And so you have to you want to know, okay, why does that say that? You're just reading the words, but it doesn't help you unless you start looking at it and going, oh, because no matter how much you have that, all those people were poor people, now rich people, they're still going to die. They're still going to suffer about something because you have not delivered them. But if they're delivered, even one person, the merit of that's greater because that's one extra person that will be on the other side trying to deliver sentient beings in that way. And there's the old saying that uh, give a man a fish and he eats for a day. Teach him how to fish and he eats for a lifetime. And so when we start studying these, we realize there's more to it. So when we start studying and we're practicing for beyond this lifetime, we're practicing to share this with others. And this is what we learn. So we learn one patience, the patience of saying this will work and this will work not just for me, because why would we even bother with that? But the very fact that that you would have, there's certain people in this world, I'm not going to mention them by name or anything like that. I mean, some of them happen to be the leaders of the Western world. If that fits somebody, then it might be by accident. But in any case, if somebody told them that they would go, "Wow, that's a lot of treasure chest for me. Why do I need to give it to the poor? I could keep that for myself." No, there's no penetration, there's no wisdom, there's no nothing for people that think in this way. But when you penetrate it and you realize that it's telling you the the solution, that this compassion is the purpose of life and the meaning of it, and it transcends even the idea of so many treasure chests to others, that there's a preciousness to that, then it realigns the way that one perceives in the world, and one begins to use the Buddha perception. So it isn't necessarily so obvious, but it is a subtle wisdom that begins to change the consciousness of that life and being, to be able to harness it and bring an attention that's useful for everyone. Again, going back to this kind of a hive mentality that is there and is working in that way. So when we see it that way, then we no longer think of our own self. There's a self-absorption. So this is how you penetrate the sutras, is that you really begin to find the reason why they're saying it. What is the true meaning? When you read something, don't just think that you might come across the meaning, say, oh, that's very good, that's so good. Wait, there's more, it's deeper than that. Don't just pick up the little bits. No, you want to get the other thing. I mean, the chickens are all waiting for the farmer to drop the seeds on the ground so they can be fed for that day. The smart chicken will follow the farmer back to where he filled the bucket. And so when we do that, then we want to go to that treasury. And that treasury is a self-absorption, so that we begin to practice in a way in which all sentient beings benefit, for the benefit of all. And that makes a big difference. Okay, good question. Any last questions? Still have a little bit of time. You guys are kind of lazy today. Yes, Shloka.
Hi, Gilbert. Amitofu. And thank you for this lecture. I still have to start studying the sutras, but I just wanted to ask you, since we had a little bit of time, about the term Buddha field. You mentioned right at the end Buddha field, and it's the first time that I'm hearing about it. So I just wanted to ask, what is the Buddha field? And
Yeah, trying to think. There was Hongzit talked a lot about the Buddha field. He was the one working with side illumination and talking about it in this way, and which makes sense because as one sitting in side illumination, you're literally sitting in a Buddha field. When you're doing it right, you're not sitting there in samsara, but you're sitting in this extended Buddha field that extends out to the infinite. In the beginning, it's good enough just to extend out beyond your cushion to the whole Chan Hall, and then beyond that. But the Buddha field is something of as mind is aware. So if we use an awareness of 1,000 miles, the Buddha awareness, the Buddha mind field will extend to 1,000 miles. And if it contracts to 100, the Buddha mind field contracts to that. It doesn't mean that it's fixed there. It is just that the awareness is present. If I want to see past the all of the visible firmament in the universe, the faintest of lights, who knows how many light years out there, mind can go there and more. It can blow right through that into the next universes. It can see the universes in a spiral just lining up. And so this is the Buddha field. Wherever it is, if you can see when I mentioned that to you, your mind went out, then your mind expanded to there. So it is just this way that we see things. When we do that, then it's useless for us to hold on to the ego, like what are we going to do with the ego, when we're 200 million parsecs away from here? And could this even be called home? It becomes irrelevant. And so you see things in a totally different way because of the fact that this Buddha field is the Buddha field of Manjusri's non-dwelling. It's what makes Manjusri because of the ability to appear anywhere, and that's home. That's this dwelling place in that moment. So we begin to see things in a different way. If you could know exactly what the address was of the where Manjusri lived, then that would be a contradiction to everything that we do. But if we say, well, where does he live? Well, he lives next door. Really? And sometimes he lives down the street. Sometimes he lives, on another country or in the same bedroom as me. And so wherever it is, we see things in this way that, and we begin here, Sloka, you have to begin to think about how this applies to the consciousness, and then understanding that our consciousness in some ways is limited to our faith that this world exists as it exists. But when we break down the idea that this world is real and that all of the borders of this world is real, it's unlimited. It's liberation. It can ride the wave of light all the way out to the infinite and never stop riding. It is in this way. And so that's why I used this one here, to try to say this is how it feels, just riding the light. But there's not any riding the light because it is the light. And so we begin to think in this way and practice in this way, and it works because it returns everything back to mind, and it without negating or throwing out anything or picking anything up. It's just originally this way. So I welcome you to try to contemplate the infinite light. Just contemplate that, and little by little it will start fitting into what you're doing. Right away it won't, but little by little you'll have a metaphysical understanding of it, but later you'll have an esoteric understanding, like I say, as if one can be riding the light, and you see it, and then the things that I came up with here begin to make sense. I mentioned a while back that the one um, monk, the Mahabua, and talking about the nucleus of this radiant light, and um, and it's something that if you just say light, people will copy that, but if you begin to experience it, um, and let go, because it's hard for us to say, how are you going to be surfing a light, or whatever, or riding a light. But it's because there's not a real way to say that, but it's the very thing where simultaneously that light is ever present. And so we begin to use these kinds of analogies and trust them for us to try to experience it, in a way where it's the experiencing of mind. So little by little, that will come to you. Again, it's a maturation process, where from direct samsara, it doesn't make any sense. But as one begins to put down the idea of the samsara and then trusting in what's being said, then it does make a difference, like very quickly. Okay, anybody else? Last ones? Okay, so we'll finish a minute early today. But in any case, I'm glad that you hung around to do this. Again, this is not easy, but then again, it's not hard, because what it does is it explains how to practice mind work. And when you begin to learn how to practice it, it won't take too much time. Honestly, it won't take that much time to be able to do this. It speeds up the process dramatically to do it in this way. So keep practicing. I might go back to some basic stuff, but somebody was telling me, because I was going to go up to San Francisco and teach the basics, and they go, "That's good," and they said, "But Gilbert, even your basics aren't basics." So I taught the ABCs. Even the ABCs are a little bit kind of like Emerald Lagasse, that kick it up a few notches. But in any case, I'm looking forward to going up there and doing that. That'll be, I think, the 22nd and 24th. I'm heading up that way. Seems like I just got here though, right? But in any case, I'm coming along now, feeling a little better, more in this time zone. So okay, I will talk to you guys later. Tori, I missed you on Saturday. I was looking for you to go out to lunch with us, but you took off